The Maple Leafs sweep the weekend back-to-back off the Four Nations break, and it was some unlikely heroes that came up big for the Buds. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Maple Leafs cashing the money line play, cashing the puck line too, with a 5-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks on Sunday. And they also cashed both of those plays with a 6-3 win over the Carolina Hurricanes on Saturday. So a full 4 points for the Buds coming off of the Four Nations face-off. And the team looked pretty good, Dave, this weekend.
It just looked like there was, the effort was there. Like, you could tell in both games when they maybe started going on a little bit of a lull, like the effort wasn't there. But like when they were putting foot to the gas, like their opponent couldn't stop them, right?
Yeah, they're playing fast, really fast. I thought they were all over Carolina early. I mean, they go up 4-0 in that game Saturday night, in the first period, and it was, whoa, what is going on here? Like, Carolina is a good hockey team. That's a well-structured team. They don't allow 4 goals very often, let alone in one period, and that's exactly what the Maple Leafs were able to do. Now, it got dicey towards the end there, obviously, and, it was 4-1. Even worse, it was 4-0. Tweets were in the chamber ready to go, I'm sure, for all the Leafs haters out there. But Toronto able to get that one locked down, and then, an easier win the following night in Chicago, winning that one by a score of 5-2. Let's start by breaking down the Hurricanes win. We'll break down both wins and kind of go over the weekend performances that was. But the Hurricanes win, we mentioned it, up 4-0. They got off to a really good start, nearly gave it away in the third period. But, I still thought that Toronto, they really showed up ready to play that night.
I thought so, like right off the hop, right? And I made a joke in the Discord. It was just like, I'm getting bored. There hasn't been any goals for a bit for the Leafs. And that start was like unreal just because they weren't cheating, right? And guys were getting in the right positions. They were putting a lot of pressure on that Hurricanes blue line. Again, night and day from what we saw against them the last time they played Carolina. I think there maybe have been a little bit of we didn't like the way that last game sat with us. We're going to try to get a bit of retribution. And just go figure, Jordan Staal decides. I kind of gave the Leafs a bit of a beating last time. Let me give them a little bit of help and score on my own net.
Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what he was trying to do there. 100%. Shout out, little stick taps to Alex Steeves, who scored his first goal as a NHL player, I guess. First goal of the season, first goal of his career, and a beautiful shot to open up the scoring, and then the floodgates kind of open from there on out. Pontus Holmberg scored a goal. Then David Kampf got in on the action. And then Tavares was, the lone core 4 member to score in that period. And really, we look at both games. I think that's the big theme that comes out of this weekend is depth scoring was alive and well. The team scored 11 goals this weekend, 11 goals. And you look at 9 of them were scored by depth players. One of the goals that was scored by the core 4, Austin Matthews, was an empty netter. So you look at how many times the goaltender was beat. Only one time did one of the core 4 players beat a goalie, and that was John Tavares in the first period there in the Saturday game. So, man, if that's what the rest did was kind of light a fire under the ass of some of these players, and look, Calle Armcock's coming back. He is coming back. So somebody's job is definitely, up for grabs. Connor Dewar is returning to the lineup at some point here. Like, there are jobs that are in jeopardy and no one wants to come out of the lineup. And you saw a guy like Pontus Holmberg show in the games, both games, that he wants to remain in the lineup. You saw Nick Robertson have a great game against the Chicago Blackhawks, and not only offensively with 2 goals, but he was back checking. He was forcing turnovers. I thought that he was, aggressive. Like, I thought Robertson had a terrific game in against Chicago. So that was kind of the biggest theme for me this weekend, was the depth came up very, very big, and hopefully this can continue.
Yeah, but this is, again, we know that the success of this team has always been centered around what the core 4 does. But it makes it a lot easier when the rest of the team is doing what they need to do, right? Like, Brad Treliving kind of always said this, that it's always, yes, there's always this talk about the core 4, but it's kind of the whole team that kind of needs to step up and do their part. And we going into the break, there was a lot of talk about, would they get the depth scoring? Is the depth scoring going to be enough? I think maybe, a lot of these players got a bit of that reset that they needed. Right? When you look at
they look rested. They look rested, like they've been shot out of a cannon, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's exactly what you wanted to see coming out of the break.
All 4 lines, right? Especially the third line. We were, there's a lot of talk about, Domi, he hasn't scored in a while. Nick Robinson, he hasn't scored in a while. And then Bobby McMahon, are we going to get the same Bobby McMahon from the pre-break? But I think it also had a lot more to do with, like, you got a guy like Alex Steeves, who, spending a lot of time in the AHL. You think, why can't he get himself a spot in the NHL lineup? The consistency wasn't there in his office. Like, he has to be, in order for him to be an everyday player on this team. Sure, you can play 4th line minutes, but how can you elevate what that 4th line does? Right now, if he's going to be an offensive threat like this as a 4th line player, if I'm a couple of those guys that are sitting, sidelined and injured, a little bit worried about what Alex Steve just did, right? And I think the internal competition right now, while sometimes it can, you play with a little bit of fire, I think for this Leafs team, it's needed.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like, this is a guy who's got 29 tucks down in the American League. He is the franchise leader in goals for the Marlies. Like, think about that. Last 2 years, he's done nothing but score, and he finally gets an opportunity to come up and play with the big boys in the big club, and he ends up scoring a goal. He's a +1, and he can contribute, with physically as well. I think he had 3 hits tonight. Like, he was credited with some hits, couple of shots on goal over the weekend. Like, he can really play a 200-foot game. So it was nice to see, and he's got a really good shot. Like, that release on that goal last night. That was a big league shot, big league release. So I think he's gonna definitely try and push for one of those final spots on the roster and say, hey, you don't need to trade for a depth forward. You got one down in the American League. You can fill that spot internally that can come in and give you some valuable 2-way 4th line minutes. If you need a goal, you need someone who can provide you a little bit of offense depending on, matchup dependent. Hey, I can give you that. And that's what you love to see. Nick Robertson's proving, like, hey, I can play every night if you give me the right line mates. And I don't know, sometimes, it seems like Robertson and Domi have it. Remember a couple months ago where those two with Bobby McMahon, there was like the misfit line, we were calling them. And they like had scored like 3 games in a row. All 3 of them scored in that game against Buffalo. And then, kind of injuries occurred. They had to break it up. And all of a sudden they get put back together tonight and they have a lot of success. They scored twice. And it was, again, Max Domi making some plays. And what does he have? Nick Robertson going to the net, going into the middle of the ice, get your stick down and be ready. And they seem to be gaining some chemistry. So maybe, there's something there for the Maple Leafs. But I can tell you what, eventually Matthews is going to get hot. Willie's going to start, getting those shots to drop. And if they can also be getting this, depth scoring, they got 2 goals from defensemen in the Sunday game against Chicago. Like, This is a team that's dead last in the NHL from, getting production from the blue line, and they get not one but two, and from a couple unlikely sources too. Jake McCabe and Chris Tanev, it's your shutdown pair, and they're getting you goals. So a really positive start to the post Four Nations break for the Maple Leafs to pick up 4 points. They got a lot of guys, feeling good about themselves now, feeling great after a solid start to a good weekend, solid start to the post Four Nations schedule, I guess, for lack of a better term. I thought that it was a really good weekend overall for the Buds.
It was a good weekend, and I know sometimes I'm not one that tries to look too early at the standings, but you put yourself ahead of Florida. You have that game in hand, and Florida, unfortunately, you lost your first game out of the break. You don't have Matthew Tkachuk. You got a couple guys that are banged up. This is an opportunity right now for the Leafs to do what I think, and they talked about it, like they haven't won the division. They've not won the Atlantic Division. This is something that maybe it gives them that little extra edge, that little extra push that they need down the stretch here.
Yeah, and they got an interesting game on what's today? On Tuesday, I think they're in Boston, right? So that'll be a tough matchup. No Charlie McAvoy, so another team competing in that Atlantic, or a Hampus Lindholm. So the Leafs should be able to put up some offense with those guys missing. Then they got the Rangers, who are a Jekyll and Hyde team this year. Then they got to roll into Pittsburgh to face Crosby and the Penguins, but it's not. This ain't the Penguins of 10 years ago. It's the Penguins of now, and they're not a very good hockey club. So, this is a chance on this road trip. There's some winnable games. Then you come home, you got the San Jose Sharks waiting. So it's going to be an interesting little road trip, a chance for them to put, some points up on the standings board here and try and take control of that top spot in the Atlantic Division. All right, when we come back, let's chat a little bit about the goaltending we saw this past weekend and the decision to go with Stolarz over Woll in night one. Did that tell us anything about where the goaltending hierarchy stands at this point in time? We'll get to that and more next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. You might also like the fact that they come in some nice grab and go bags. You can take them whether on the road, you want to have them at your desk, or you just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you like cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Today's show is also sponsored by Farm to Fork. If you're a fan of premium, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door, I've got some exciting news. Farm to Fork makes it easy to get high-quality steaks, air-chilled chicken, wild-caught seafood, and more, all with no antibiotics, hormones, or GMOs. Plus, everything comes flash frozen and individually packed for your convenience. All Farm to Fork meats are raised on Canadian farms, so when you order, you're supporting local producers. It's time to buy Canadian. Farm to Fork's meats are top notch. I've had some amazing steaks. They're tender, they're juicy. You can cook them perfectly. Their chicken is air chilled. It's fresher and more flavorful than anything you're going to get at the grocery store. They're delivering all across Ontario and in Western Quebec. And the best part, delivery is free with a minimum order of $199. You don't even have to leave the house to get this quality. I've got a special code just for you Locked On Leafs listeners. Use Locked On 40 to get $40 off your first order at Farm to Fork. Visit farmtoforkdelivery.ca to start stocking up on the best meats around. Again, that's Locked On 40 for $40 off your first order. Farm to Fork, delicious, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you here as always, Monday to Friday with brand new podcasts, which are free and available wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube as well. And the Maple Leafs coming off a weekend where they got back into action after the Four Nations face-off. They won both games in the back-to-back. They won 6-3 against the Carolina Hurricanes and 5-2 against the Chicago Blackhawks. Dave, we didn't really talk about what the goalie situation was going to be going into the game on Friday, on Friday's show, going into the back-to-backs. We said someone's going to start Saturday, the other's going to start Sunday. But did you take anything out of the fact that Stolarz went Saturday and then Woll got the Sunday start?
Maybe a little bit. I think, Craig Rubin said, they want to get Stolarz going a bit here. But at the same time, it's just like he was playing so well before he got injured, right? Like the numbers speak for themselves, just how good he was this year. And we kind of saw Joseph Woll with the extra workload. It was getting a little bit, it was hampering him a little bit. I thought he was still playing great without Stolarz. Don't get me wrong. I also just think that at this rate, you got both of them. You're going to use both of them. Craig Brewer kind of said, like, what they both got to play, right? They're both going to play this weekend. What it will really, I don't think this weekend will speak as much. I think it'll have more to do with how they take the workload over the next month, right? Because at some point, it's not happened yet. It hasn't really talked about yet, but at some point, there's going to be that discussion of who are you leaning towards going into the playoffs, because it's only one net, right? Both have played well. Both have made a good case why they probably should be starting in the playoffs, but ultimately, that's a decision that the head coach is going to have to make at some point.
Absolutely. And to talk about Stolar's numbers, of goaltenders who've played at least 15 games this year, Stolarz leads the NHL in save percentage. He's got a .928 save percentage through 19 starts. He's 11-5-2 with a .213 goals against average. And, that's better than Connor Hellebuyck. That's better than Vasilevsky, better than Logan Thompson. The list, you can just go down of all the great goaltenders in the league, and Stolarz has a better save percentage than all of them. And a .213 goals against is pretty top notch also. That's second in the NHL among all goaltenders who start at least 15 games. Hellebuyck obviously being at the top of the list. So yeah, Stolarz, I think they're looking at it saying, man, there's a chance that like there's something in this guy. Like he's figured something out late into his 20s, into his, late 20s or so. And they're giving him a real look. And I don't know, for me coming out of the break, we didn't talk about it on Friday, but again, I started chatting about it in my group chat with some other buddies, and I'm thinking whoever gets this start on Saturday, I think they view as the 1A, and then whoever gets the Sunday start is the 1B. And yeah, it could be, them wanting to get a look at Stolarz, but they could have waited an extra night to do that. I think it says something as to who they believe has earned the right to get that first start right out of the gate, and who they want to give the best opportunity to against the better team at that in the Carolina Hurricanes. And he played great. He played excellent. Both did. Granted, thought both goaltenders played really well. But, Stolarz, gave up 3 goals, but a couple of them just really bad bounces. And, what are you going to do? It was 4-0 in the third period. And at one point you're thinking, man, is he about to shut out the Carolina Hurricanes? And then one bounce leads to another bounce. And next thing you know, it was 4-3. And it was like, what is going on here? Like, is this going to be the second worst loss ever to this team on this date? Because that was the same anniversary date as the David Ayres game.
Yep.
Dave, which I had forgotten about until that was brought up on the broadcast. And I'm like, man, what is it with this date against the Carolina Hurricanes? But they were able to kind of settle it down once it became 4-3, and they finished it off and got themselves an empty net goal to kind of really solidify things. So they finished it off, and then thought Woll played well himself against the Chicago Blackhawks as well. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I think it means that Stolarz kind of has the upper hand right now in the goalie battle. And like you said, that conversation doesn't really need to be solidified today, but at some point, someone's going to have to take the reins here. And it looks like the Leafs themselves might be looking at Stolarz saying, all right, here's your chance. Go grab it. So we'll see how the starts kind of roll out. If they keep alternating 1-1, 1-1-1, or someone gets, 2-3 in a row, I'm sure that will kind of tell us a little bit more than what we saw this weekend, but something interesting to kind of keep an eye on. All right. On the other side, we'll get to some league-wide news coming off the Four Nations face-off, and Ovi's march to Gretzky's record continues with a big-time performance on Sunday. We'll tell you about that next on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game faces off, the NHL action is getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening faceoff or you want to bet on a third period comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or you're picking a player to score a goal, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. I had my best bet tonight. Austin Matthews, over 3.5 shots. What happened? Paid within minutes of the final buzzer. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you here on a wonderful Monday, coming off of the first bit of action of the NHL schedule post Four Nations face-off. And it's interesting, Dave, the Four Nations face-off, I actually want to bring this up before we get into the whole Ovechkin craze quickly. The lasting effect that this is going to have is quite large. I think we all know. Mm-hmm. I was watching the Blue Jays game earlier today, the Spring League game, and it was a Red Sox feed. They spent a good 5 minutes talking about the Four Nations face-off. They were talking about, McAvoy's injury, and then talking about, how well it was and how everyone was into it. And it was a legit 5-minute conversation sitting there talking about the Four Nations face-off, talking about hockey. Then it led into them talking about the Bruins and Swayman and this and that. And it was like, holy smokes. Like it really isn't something that we're now getting hockey talk on a Red Sox broadcast. So when you talk about these tournaments, they're supposed to grow the game. That's what we're talking about. Mission accomplished. Mission absolutely accomplished, NHL. And it's even still, it's been 4 days since the final, and it's still being talked about on other broadcasts. Way to go. Way to go. One final round of applause for the NHL, for Gary Bettman, and everyone involved. Round of applause.
Especially the players.
Especially the players and Connor McDavid. And our guy, Mitch Marner, for making it all happen on the gold medal game, on the gold medal winning goal. Mitch Marner sauce.
There were two things about that. Like now it's almost like the complete 180 where now you have to hate McDavid, hate Brad Marchand.
Well, it's been a tough go for McDavid though since they got back. I mean, they get pummeled. Like that's the thing though. Like it was so unfair for McDavid having to come back and play a game Saturday afternoon, 1:00 puck drop. They get dusted 6-3 to the Philadelphia Flyers, and then the next day they got to play the Caps in another afternoon game, and they get crushed 7-3. So they get outscored 13-6 in their first two games back. And I don't even know if McDavid actually ended up scoring a goal in either game.
I want to say no. I know Draisaitl did. He got his 42nd against the Capitals.
He didn't score tonight. Did he score yesterday? I don't think he did either. No,
he had no points either. He was a -6 this weekend.
Yeah, he needs McDavid, or he needs Marner. He needs Mitch Marner, which means he needs to come to Toronto to get Mitch Marner. That's what needs to happen. McDavid to Toronto, make it happen. But on the other side of McDavid on Sunday was Alex Ovechkin. Not one, not two, 3 goals, a hat trick for Alex Ovechkin. And it ends up putting him pretty darn close. How many goals though is he at now? Let me see.
Career, he's at he was at
82, 882. So he's at 882, but he scored his 29th goal of the season this year. Keep in mind, he missed 6 weeks. And he still has 29 goals. It's insanity, and he's only 13 away now from passing Gretzky. 12 to tie, 13 to pass him. It is unbelievable.
It's happening, man. It's happening.
Oh, dude, it's not even a question anymore. If he's healthy, I mean, outside of that injury from earlier this year, he's been nothing but a beacon of health ever since he broke into the league. So, knock on wood that remains that way. But man, dude, I'm getting so jacked up and fired up for this. Like, it's happening, and it's going to happen quick. It's going to happen soon. And I thought that when he missed time, it was going to make it dicey, but he's done nothing but continue to rip it up since coming back from the injury. And the Washington Capitals just continue to win. I think they have 17 goals in these 2 games since they came. Like, it's been the complete opposite of the Edmonton Oilers. Like, the Caps put up 7 tonight, and then they put up 8 yesterday. So 15 goals in the last 2 games. It's insane.
Only 2 teams have scored over 200 goals combined this year. Washington and Tampa, and Washington has 211 goals. 211. The Leafs have 180.
And they are second in the NHL in goal differential, a plus 65, which is far and away the best in the Eastern Conference. Next best is the Tampa Bay Lightning at plus 47, and then New Jersey at plus 36. Number 1 in the league is the Winnipeg Jets at plus 69.
Yeah, sorry, the Jets are the 3rd team. I was looking at Eastern Conference, 3rd team in the league that have over 200 goals.
Yeah, they got 206, and the Capitals 211, which leads the NHL in scoring. So unsurprising, I guess, when you look at how that team's been able to really rally this year around, Alex Ovechkin and the chase there. And as a team, I mean, 38, 11, and 8, 84 points. That leads the league now with a win today. Leads the league, a league leading 84 points. Atop of the standings for the President's Trophy. Any games in hand? Nope. Same amount of games. So they now officially own the league's best points percentage in the NHL. Quite remarkable. Quite the turnaround for the Washington Capitals. Look at the Atlantic Division. We talked about it already, Dave. Coming out of the break, first 2 games, Toronto picking up wins, whereas the Panthers, they suffer a loss. And now Toronto, 72 points. So they're a point ahead of Florida and still have a game in hand on the Panthers. So looking pretty good for Toronto. The Lightning, 68 points, now 4 points back of the Leafs. They won 5 in a row, though. They won 3 straight to end off the Four Nations face-off, and now they're picking it up with a couple of wins afterwards. So the Lightning starting to get it going, and we know that the Lightning has some real solid players. We just saw a trio of them, do well for Team Canada, Point, Hagel, and Cirelli. So the Lightning, after getting a little taste, that's not to mention the coach, which is the greatest in the world, getting a taste of success. So that they're going to be battling hard for a playoff spot. But I'm still really intrigued by what this wild card race is going to look like down the stretch here, Dave. Like, we got Detroit, Ottawa, Columbus, Boston, and the New York Rangers all within 4 points of each other, 2 spots on the line. And we've got 5 teams really going head to head. Could possibly throw in the Islanders and Canadians if you really wanted to. But for me, I'm looking at those 5 teams. 2 will make it. Should be a hell of a final stretch here the last couple of months of the regular season.
It really is. And Ottawa could not have asked for a worse return from the Four Nations face-off. No Brady Tkachuk. You lose bad to a Montreal team that you should beat. even without a Brady Tkachuk in the lineup. And if I'm Ottawa, like Columbus is behind you. Boston, they might be trending in a different direction with these injuries that they have now, although you can never count Boston out just because it's the way they are. New York is the interesting team for me because they've been so up and down that at some point either they're going to figure it out or they're going to crash. They're like the true wild card team to me because obviously they make the move for JT Miller, right? And who knows, they could go out and they could try to make another deal. I don't know what their cap picture is like because I know that the JT Miller Jacob Trouba swap kind of helped a little bit with their salary cap situation, but that if I'm Ottawa, I'm worried. I'm a little worried because those are a couple of teams that are right behind you, and Linus Ullmark did not have a good return from the Four Nations. He just hasn't gotten it together the last little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing okay at one point there, prior to the break, and then got hurt, and then came back and didn't have a great tournament, and we'll see. I mean, the jury's still out there. The problem is there's just so many teams. Like Columbus is playing really good. They beat Chicago Saturday night and look good doing it. Like Columbus is actually the only team battling right now for one of the wild card spots that's a plus goal differential, +2. Whereas Ottawa's -1, Detroit's -11, Boston -26. That's kind of crazy to see. And the Rangers -7 with Igor Shesterkin as their goalie. So, yeah, there's it's going to be a wild race the rest of the way. And, yeah, we'll be keeping track of it, Dave. But what we are mostly concerned with at this point, I think, is at the top of the Atlantic because it looks like it's going to be a great race to see who can win that crown between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Tampa's got a shot. Tampa's
5 in a row, but I mean the Leafs still have a pretty good cushion. It's a good cushion that they have. And this is why
they got a game in hand too. Tampa's got a game in hand as well. So if they win that, it's only a 2-pointer. So I would say that Tampa's in the mix as well. So like the Leafs, the Panthers, and the Lightning. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun final couple of months, and Toronto getting off to a really great start coming off of the break.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I think it was on the broadcast Saturday. I think the Leafs have one of the easier strength of schedules from here on out.
Yes, I can tell you exactly what it is. Strength of schedule NHL, because there's a beautiful website called Tankathon that can help you with that. And if you look at the strength of schedule, the Toronto Maple Leafs have the easiest schedule remaining in the NHL. 25 games left for an average win percentage of .530. So the average win percentage of their opponents is .530. So they've got San Jose to play twice still. They've got Nashville. They've got Buffalo. They've got the Flyers, the Penguins, and they do have 3 still against the Florida Panthers. And I'm sure those games will be very influential in how things shake out at the top of the Atlantic Division, I would imagine. So, but yeah, if you look at the final 25 games, in reference to points percentage and win-loss records of the opponents that they're playing, the Toronto Maple Leafs have the easiest strength of schedule the rest of the way. So, sounds good. Don't screw it up.
It doesn't hurt. Yeah, just don't leaf it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at tonight, right? Tonight, they're playing one of the worst teams in the league. One of the worst teams in the league. And Toronto, they've been a bad team for a few years now. And somehow Toronto, I don't know, you saw the stat on T. So we were talking about before we hopped on. Toronto hadn't won in regulation in Chicago. The last goalie to register a win in Chicago in regulation in a Maple Leafs uniform was Ed Belfour. Eddie the Eagle Belfour was the last goaltender to register a win in Chicago in a Maple Leafs uniform. That is insane. It was back in 2003. 2003, my guys. So they haven't won a single game in regulation in Chicago since in the Cap era. This is the first win in the Cap era that they've had in regulation in Chicago. It's insane. Absolute insanity. But they got it done. but they
One
got
more
it done.
because I know you like your stats. Jason and Nick Robertson became they are the first pair of brothers to score multiple goals on the same day since March 1st, 2000, when Pavel and Valerie Bury did it.
Ooh, nice stat there. Yeah.
Almost 25 years to the day.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what brothers like could have done that. Like who were some good goal scoring brothers that that could have done that at some point? Like I'm blanking, I guess, right now, but that's a pretty cool stat as well. All right, Dave. We'll end the show here. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll tee up Leafs and Bruins next in Boston. So that'll be a big game also. Always a big game when the Buds head into Beantown. The last time Mitch Marner was in Beantown at TD Garden, you remember what happened?
Did Canada remind the US who owns hockey?
They popped the bubbly, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
He popped some bubbly. Hopefully they can do it again on Tuesday night. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On at Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow to tee up the Leafs and the Bruins. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.